The morning began like any other on the Today Show, with the hosts bringing their usual mix of warmth, energy, and curiosity to the set. Hoda Kotb, as always, was poised with her signature charm, ready to engage the guests in a lively and insightful conversation. But this particular episode quickly took an unexpected turn, one that would have viewers talking long after the cameras stopped rolling. Their guest of honor was Matthew McConaughey, the Oscar-winning actor whose larger-than-life personality, philosophical musings, and Southern charisma have made him a household name. What was meant to be a promotional interview suddenly spiraled into a fiery exchange, catching both the studio and the audience off guard. McConaughey had come on the show to discuss his new project, a film layered with personal themes of resilience, identity, and truth. Initially, the conversation flowed smoothly, with Hoda asking about his process, his preparation, and his views on art's role in society. But as the dialogue deepened, Hoda pressed him with a series of probing questions that struck closer to the heart of McConaughey's beliefs about fame, politics, and the responsibilities of celebrities. For a man known for his thoughtful and sometimes unfiltered honesty, the discussion walked a fine line between curiosity and confrontation. The actor, who was rarely rattled, seemed visibly stirred as the cameras captured every moment. The tension started subtly, with McConaughey leaning forward in his chair, his body language signaling both interest and agitation. Hoda, to her credit, remained composed, her smile unwavering, but her eyes sharpened with each follow-up question. She asked if he believed celebrities should use their platforms to influence political discourse, a question that has divided Hollywood for decades. McConaughey, leaning into his Texas drawl, began to articulate his nuanced view, suggesting that while stars have influence, they must be careful not to preach or alienate. The studio audience, sensing the rising temperature of the exchange, sat in hushed silence, waiting to see where it would go. As the discussion escalated, McConaughey's tone shifted from reflective to fiery. He raised his voice slightly, his hands gesturing more emphatically as he argued that society has become too quick to polarize every opinion. He stressed the need for dialogue rather than division, for listening rather than labeling. But Hoda countered with pointed remarks, highlighting that his words could be interpreted as dismissing the real struggles and activism happening on the ground. She pressed him further, asking why, with his influence, he wouldn't take a firmer stance on certain social issues. It was this push that appeared to ignite McConaughey's eruption, the very moment when the conversation turned into a clash rather than an interview. Suddenly, the usually calm and laid-back McConaughey leaned back, exhaled deeply, and shook his head. "You want me to pick a side, Hoda," he said firmly, his voice reverberating through the studio. "But the problem is, when we only pick sides, we stop seeing the full picture. Life isn't black and white, it's a shade of gray." His words, though impassioned, carried an undercurrent of frustration, as if he felt cornered into defending a stance he never fully claimed. Hoda, not backing down, countered with, "But don't you think silence, or neutrality, is still a choice that sends a message?" The air grew thick with tension, every second stretching longer for those watching in real time. McConaughey's expression hardened. His eyes, often filled with mischief or warmth, now burned with conviction. He spoke passionately about the danger of media-driven narratives, accusing networks and public figures alike of reducing complex issues into bite-sized sound bites. His voice boomed as he declared that he wouldn't be part of the oversimplification. "I didn't come here to give a slogan, I came here to talk truth," he said, his words echoing across the set. Hoda, though clearly taken aback, remained firm, her calm exterior clashing with McConaughey's fiery delivery. This was no longer just an interview, it had become a debate, one that neither side was willing to surrender. The control room reportedly buzzed with urgency, producers unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the raw moment play out. But sensing the electricity in the air, they let the cameras roll. McConaughey's frustration turned into a passionate monologue, almost sermon-like in its rhythm. He spoke about unity, about the need for Americans to step out of their echo chambers, and about the danger of demonizing those who think differently. His southern cadence rose and fell like waves, commanding attention. The audience, though silent, seemed captivated by his eruption, aware they were witnessing a moment of rare authenticity on live television. Hoda, maintaining her professionalism, attempted to redirect, but McConaughey wasn't finished. "We've lost the middle," he proclaimed, his voice rising again. "We've forgotten how to disagree without tearing each other apart. We've made enemies out of numbers." His words struck with intensity, the kind that couldn't be rehearsed. He leaned forward, eyes locked with Hoda, as if daring her to challenge him further. Hoda responded gently but firmly, acknowledging his points but emphasizing that celebrities, with their massive platforms, cannot ignore the weight their words carry. This back and forth created a rhythm, a clash of perspectives that played out in real time before millions of viewers. The eruption was not one of anger for anger's sake, but rather a boiling over of conviction. McConaughey's frustration came not from hostility toward Hoda personally, but from what he saw as a microcosm of a larger issue via the constant demand to declare allegiance, to pick a side, to fit neatly into a box. For an actor whose career has been built on playing complex, layered characters, the oversimplification of identity struck a nerve. The longer he spoke, the more animated he became, his southern drawl rolling like thunder, his hands slicing the air as he made his points. It was as if years of pent-up thoughts were pouring out all at once. Hoda, though visibly uncomfortable at moments, never lost her composure. She leaned into her role as an interviewer, keeping her questions sharp but respectful. At one point, she even smiled wryly and said, "Matthew, you're giving us more than the film pitch today," lightening the mood briefly. But McConaughey, still riding the wave of his emotions, wasn't ready to pull back. He returned with an almost defiant tone, arguing that entertainment platforms should not just be places of promotion, but arenas for truth-telling. "If I just came here to plug my movie," he said, "then I'm wasting everyone's time. I want to talk about what really matters." By now, the studio atmosphere was thick with energy, a mix of discomfort and fascination. McConaughey's words were not the polished sound bites that morning shows typically thrive on. They were raw, unfiltered, and sometimes confrontational. He challenged not just Hoda but the audience itself, urging viewers to think beyond the binary labels of left and right. "We've stopped listening," he said, his voice almost pleading. "We shout, we tweet, we cancel, but we don't sit down and really hear each other anymore." The sincerity in his tone softened the edges of his eruption, reminding everyone that beneath the fire was a call for understanding, not division. Hoda leaned forward, folding her hands, her eyes steady on McConaughey. She acknowledged his passion but pressed him once again, asking if his reluctance to take sides might come across as privilege or something not everyone can afford. The question seemed to momentarily stun him. He paused, running a hand through his hair, before responding with a measured but firm reply. "I hear you," he admitted, "but if we keep forcing everyone to declare allegiance, we leave no room for nuance, and nuance is where truth lies." The exchange drew murmurs from the crew off camera, as the conversation struck chords that went far deeper than the typical promotional interview. At that point, McConaughey's eruption took on a new tone, less fiery and more reflective. He spoke of his upbringing in Texas, of the lessons instilled in him by his parents about respect, humility, and standing by one's principles. His anecdotes painted a picture of a man caught between worlds of the Hollywood spotlight and his small-town roots. "I'm not saying I've got all the answers," he confessed, his voice softening. "But I'm saying we need to stop pretending like the answers are easy. Life's messy, people are messy, and that's okay." The vulnerability in his words reminded viewers why McConaughey has always resonated beyond just his roles on screen. Hoda, sensing a chance to humanize the heated moment, asked whether his views stemmed from his own struggles with fame and scrutiny. McConaughey nodded, acknowledging that his life in the public eye often felt like living in a fishbowl, where every word or gesture could be twisted into a narrative he never intended. "You say one thing, and suddenly it's a headline," he said with exasperation. "You make a mistake, and suddenly you're branded forever." His candid admission struck a chord with anyone who's felt misrepresented, and for a brief moment, the tension eased into mutual understanding between guest and host. Still, the conversation refused to return to calm waters. Hoda pressed again, asking about specific issues, hoping to pin down where McConaughey stood. But instead of giving a straightforward answer, he pushed back harder, his eruption flaring once more. "The problem isn't my stance," he said sharply. "The problem is the expectation that I should fit neatly into your categories. I'm not a soundbite, I'm not a bumper sticker, I'm a person, and I'm telling you, people are more complicated than we're being allowed to be." His words hung in the air like a challenge, daring anyone to disagree. By now, social media was already ablaze, with viewers clipping segments of the interview and reacting in real time. Some praised McConaughey for speaking truth to power, while others criticized him for dodging accountability. Meanwhile, in the studio, Hoda maintained her professionalism, but her eyes revealed a mix of determination and concern. She knew she had to balance her role as interviewer with the unexpected firestorm unraveling Live. She tried to steer the conversation back toward his new film, but McConaughey, still burning with conviction, wasn't done making his point. "You want to talk about the movie?" he said, leaning in with intensity. "The film is about truth. It's about confronting hard realities without simplifying them. And that's exactly what I'm doing here." His words blurred the line between promotion and personal philosophy, weaving his project into his eruption seamlessly. He described scenes from the movie that mirrored the themes he was discussing: a characters caught between loyalty and independence, between truth and comfort. It became clear that for McConaughey, this interview wasn't just press, it was an extension of the message he wanted to deliver to the world. Hoda nodded, acknowledging the connection, but reminded him that audiences often look to celebrities for guidance, especially in turbulent times. That statement reignited his fiery energy. "Guidance, sure," he said, "but not commandments. I'm not here to tell people what to think. I'm here to encourage them to think for themselves." He leaned back, his voice firm, his jaw set with resolve. The moment crystallized the essence of his eruption: a rebellion against conformity, against the pressure to deliver pre-packaged answers to complex human issues. The audience watching at home could feel the authenticity, whether they agreed with him or not. As the interview progressed, the producers in the control room debated whether to intervene, but the raw, unscripted nature of the exchange was proving too captivating to cut short. The clash had become more than just a headline, it was a cultural moment. McConaughey continued to drive his points home, warning against the dangers of divisive media and the trap of living in echo chambers. Hoda, though occasionally visibly frustrated, managed to keep the dialogue alive, pushing him in ways that tested his resolve but also drew out his deepest convictions. The actor's eruption reached its peak when he raised his voice in a near shout, declaring, "We don't need more division, we need more conversation." His words echoed through the studio like a rallying cry. The audience, though instructed to remain quiet, couldn't help but react with scattered applause. McConaughey's passion was undeniable, and even those who disagreed with him had to admire the courage it took to speak so boldly on live television. Hoda, caught between moderating and absorbing his fire, allowed the moment to breathe, giving space for his words to settle with the viewers. After the peak of his eruption, McConaughey's demeanor began to shift again. He sat back in his chair, visibly drained but still brimming with conviction. His tone softened, but his words carried the weight of everything he had just unleashed. "Look, Hoda," he said, his voice calmer now. "I respect you. I respect what you're doing. But I also have to stand on my own 2 feet here. I can't just give you what you want to hear." The sincerity in his delivery momentarily dissolved the clash into something more intimate, a man defending not just his beliefs but his very identity. Hoda responded with grace, acknowledging his passion and thanking him for being so candid, even if it meant clashing on live television. "That's what makes this job meaningful," she said softly. "Hearing the truth, even when it's uncomfortable." Her response seemed to touch McConaughey, who cracked a faint smile for the first time since the eruption began. For a fleeting moment, the tension gave way to mutual respect, and the clash transformed into a rare and authentic connection between interviewer and guest. But even as the atmosphere softened, McConaughey's eruption lingered in the air. He continued to elaborate on his belief that society needed to rediscover the lost art of listening. "It's not about agreeing all the time," he said. "It's about respecting that someone else's truth may look different from yours. And if we can't do that, then we're headed down a dangerous path." His words, though calmer now, still carried the fiery conviction that had fueled his earlier outburst. It was as if he had shifted from battle mode to teaching mode, still determined to leave an impression. Behind the scenes, producers were already imagining the headlines that would follow. McConaughey erupts, clash with Hoda, live TV fireworks. So the phrases practically wrote themselves. But in the moment, none of that mattered to McConaughey. He seemed less concerned with how he would be portrayed and more focused on seizing the platform to say what he felt needed to be heard. For a man who often blends Hollywood charisma with Southern grit, this eruption was not a sleep-up, it was intentional, a declaration of his refusal to conform to scripted narratives. Hoda, never one to let the tough conversation pass without reflection, asked him if he feared backlash. McConaughey smiled knowingly, his eyes glinting with a mix of defiance and acceptance. "Backlash comes with the territory," he said, "but if I don't speak my truth because I'm afraid of what people might say, then what's the point? I'd rather take the heat for being real than get praised for being fake." The audience erupted in applause, unable to stay silent any longer. The eruption, though controversial, had clearly struck a chord. As the applause faded, Hoda took the opportunity to bring the conversation back to the viewers at home. She asked McConaughey what message he wanted people to walk away with from both his film and this heated interview. Without hesitation, he replied, "Don't settle for easy answers. Don't buy into the US first system mindset. Talk to your neighbor. Listen to someone you don't agree with. That's how we move forward." His voice, steady and strong, carried the weight of someone who wasn't just promoting art but pushing for a cultural shift. By now, the interview had gone far beyond its scheduled time, but neither McConaughey nor Hoda seemed eager to wrap it up. The clash had become a dialogue that transcended its fiery beginnings, offering viewers a glimpse into the complexities of both the guest and the issues at hand. The actor's eruption had evolved into a conversation about humanity, unity, and the courage to stand firm in one's beliefs. For many watching, it was more than just entertainment, it was a wake-up call. As the segment finally neared its conclusion, McConaughey's tone softened once more. He thanked Hoda for pushing him, even when it felt uncomfortable. "Iron sharpens iron," he said with a grin, his earlier fire now tempered into warmth. Hoda, equally gracious, thanked him for his candor, acknowledging that television needs more real moments like this, even if they're messy. Their exchange, though heated at times, ended on a note of mutual appreciation, showing that conflict doesn't always have to lead to animosity. When the cameras finally cut to commercial, the studio exhaled a collective breath. Crew members whispered to one another, still buzzing about what they had just witnessed. McConaughey leaned back in his chair, looking both exhausted and relieved, while Hoda sipped her water, her composure never faltering. It was a moment that would be dissected, replayed, and debated across media outlets for days to come. The eruption had not only made headlines but had sparked conversations far beyond the Today Show's studio walls. In the end, McConaughey's clash with Hoda Kotb wasn't just about one interview, it was about the broader struggle to navigate truth in a divided world, about the pressures celebrities face in the spotlight, and about the human need to be heard without being reduced to labels. His eruption may have been controversial, but it was also undeniably authentic, a reflection of a man unwilling to compromise his beliefs for the sake of convenience. As the credits rolled and viewers processed what they had just witnessed, one thing was clear: this was a Today Show moment that would be remembered for years to come.